Cops are ridiculous. What is the most suspicious thing you've ever caught somebody doing for a totally legitimate reason? My dad told me about a time, back in the 80s, my father was sitting in his cruiser, around the corner from a bar. A car drives by swerving a little with exhaust coming for the tailpipe, signifying a recently started vehicle. Pulls the guy over, smells alcohol on the driver, while also noticing a large staff in the back seat. He has the driver step out, then inquires about the staff. The driver tells my dad I'm a black belt in Kung Fu. I use it in class, so my father, unconvinced, asks him to demonstrate his proficiency with the staff, whilst proving his sobriety in a sort of impromptu field sobriety test. The driver puts on a little show for dad on the side of the road. Dad's enjoying the show, but starts to hear sirens coming from all directions. A passerby had seen my dad on the side of the road in a face-off with a crazy man and a stick. Thinking my dad was in need of help, the passerby called the cops. Apparently, my dad had been so wrapped up in the show, he had not heard the radio calls for him, so dispatch sent all available units to his rescue. I love this so much. I was just starting on the street around the time Pokemon Go was taking off. So many contacts in the middle of the night that were just people trying to catch Pokemon. Me. Mom, I noticed you're driving in circles around this closed business at 3 AM. Person. Yeah, there's a herd of Charmanders here and it's too busy during the day. Me. Oh, thanks for letting me know. Pulls out phone and opens Go. This happened to us once. We went to a park after hours for a raid and saw cruiser pull up. We were all nervous when the window came down, so we said hello and that we were just there for Pogo. The cop smiled and said me, too. Plus he was part of the K9 unit and introduced us to his dog. Overall great raid experience. D. Patrolling a military housing neighborhood, I had noticed a suspicious van parked around the area over the past few nights. Always in a different spot, but I could never catch it coming or going. So around the 5th night of this, I hide my car and wait. Sure enough, the van rolls through. I waited a few minutes before following. Turn the corner and light up 3 guys rummaging through all the trash cans left on the street. Turns out, they were part of SID. Think NCIS. The show, but army version. They suspected someone in the area was cooking and were going through that garbage cans to find discarded ingredients. I only found this out after getting chewed out after they called my supervisors. I still don't feel bad. No one told me. At least you was on your toes enough to notice and take action, man. Better safe than sorry in that situation. The first one that comes to mind for me, late at night, saw a dude hauling copper pipe out of a local grocery store after it closed down. Copper theft at the time was super common, so I thought I had a burglary in progress. I stop out, get ready for an easy arrest. Ask him what he's doing. He says he was hired to clean the place out. Ask why he's taking the copper. Owner told him that his payment was the copper piping. Since it wasn't going to be a grocery store after, they didn't need it. I didn't buy it for a minute. Bull's detector was screaming at this point. So I find the owner in our records, call him, and sure as crap, dude was hired to clean the place out and was paid in copper pipe. That was their agreement. But then I asked him why he was out at 2 AM, since it was super suspicious. Since the place closed down, there was no AC. As it was the middle of summer, 2 AM was the best way to do it and keep cool. Found a guy parked behind a middle school around 5:30 am on a weekday morning during the school's winter break, so no one should be there. He didn't have much of an excuse as to why he was there, but nothing else was out of place and he wasn't wanted. It wasn't until he drove away and I looked around where his car was parked and I found out what he was doing. He had taken a massive dump that was just sitting on top of the snow still steaming. Made me laugh so hard all I could do was kick snow over it and go 10-8. Available for calls. Oh man, I have vibes, and the worst is having an emergency when nothing is open. After the first couple of times I now carry stuff in the car to make a makeshift potty time. I was the only one on the block that didn't come out of the house after a neighbor was shot with an AK-47 at about 4:45 AM. So my house was suspicious. The cops came over and banged on the door. They thought it was me. I slept through the whole thing. Took the cops quite a while to wake me up. I had no alibi. My roommate slept through it too. Kinda weird. Once in the early 2000s, my wife and I were together in the corner of an empty hotel parking lot. Cops pulled up and said the hotel manager reported us as suspicious. We were like, we're just stealing the hotel's wireless internet. He looks in and sees us both with laptops on our laps and a miniature printer on the dashboard. The cop just laughed and said never mind. I find so many suspicious vehicles in our National Veterans Cemetery in my jurisdiction. They almost always turn out to be Pokemon Goers. OMG yes. When Pokemon Go came out a couple summers ago, we got so many suspicious person calls. All of them Pokemon. 3 AM on a weeknight and I pull up behind a car at a light. The light is green and the car is stopped but running. Foot was on the brake. Light turns red so I wait behind him. Light turns green again and this dude isn't moving. So my partner and I quietly exit our vehicle and approach his. He was completely passed out, asleep, with the car in drive. We woke him up and talked to him to make sure he wasn't drunk and he was just tired because his wife had a baby a few days ago and needed him to run to the store for something. That newborn sleep deprivation is real. I'm in a local saltwater aquarium club. It has always been a joke that the cops have come to quite a few of our houses when they see grow light in the basement. For corals, the cops usually check electric records and show we all have extremely high electricity usage and thus can usually get a warrant to search the place. It's never happened to me but has happened to people I know. Cops usually get a good laugh out of it and are amazed to see the coral growing systems people run. Conclusion: if you wanna grow weed in the basement, grow coral upstairs. I have a relevant one that happened to a friend of a friend. Dude had 2 huskies and while he was at work they got in a fight and the one killed the other one. His dogs had loved the dog park so he figured he would bury it in the nearby woods. Parks his truck and goes into the trees with a big frickin' bag and a shovel. Comes out a while later to a bunch of cops. Turns out there was a kid missing in the area at the time and people at the park had called the cops on him. They made him go back into the woods and dig up the dead dog and show them. Dang, that's tough. Recently I was conducting a S18 house search on a guy we'd arrested in a local club with loads of drugs on him. In his room I found an oversized, out of place, vase with false flowers in them. Suspicion raised. I take the flowers out and in the bottom I saw what I believed to be a balaclava. Here we go. I took it out, unfolded it, and it turned out to be a jumper for a small dog. I look in the vase again. I see a blue velvet drawstring bag. I manipulate it slightly and it rustles, with the feeling of lots of little packets inside. I remove it slowly, open the bag and inside are some retro Scrabble pieces. Da fuck. We didn't find any further drugs in his room. We did however find a big frick-off sized machete under his mattress wrapped up in a tea towel, so that was interesting. Still confused AF about the contents of that vase though. My cousin is a cop and told us the story of seeing a car driving slowly at about 3 AM through a neighborhood that had had several break-ins. He thinks to himself that they're looking for a target, so he puts on his lights and pulls them over. He walks up and the driver puts the window down and she turns to look at him with fire in her eyes and says, in a harsh whisper, "This had better be important because I just got the baby to sleep." He looks in the back and there's a baby in a car seat, sound asleep. The memory of what it was like when his babies wouldn't sleep rushes back, and he says, "Oh no, I'm so sorry, never mind," and goes back to his car. She drives away slowly. He's just glad he didn't wake the baby. He fell for the oldest trick in the book, the "I'll take your baby on the heist" trick. Rookie mistake. Worked campus security for a bit back in college. One night an officer radioed in a possible domestic abuse or robbery. A male and a female behind some random building in some kind of physical altercation. 20 seconds later he came back on the radio and said never mind, they were just being romantic. Prior US Coast Guard. We were doing a security boarding on a vessel planning on entering port with some hazardous cargo. Me and one other guy are in the engine room, making sure everything is kosher, when we catch a glimpse of some boots barely sticking out from under a piece of machinery. Since, as far as we knew, all crew were present and accounted for above deck, we were understandably concerned. We radio up asking about it, get told all present and accounted for up above. So we're thinking stowaway or someone being smuggled. Luckily it was neither, just a dude who legit fell asleep while doing some maintenance. He shared a name with one of the other crew, so that's how we missed his absence. Apparently our guy up above, checked the same guy twice. Go fig. Imagine the state of confusion that guy was in. Falls asleep doing maintenance work on some machinery and is woken up by the Coast Guard. That's easy. I'm a campus police officer and I was working the overnight shift. This of course means patrolling the parking lots, and from time to time you find people parked in dark spots doing various things. On night I turn a corner and see a car in an empty lot, so I drive up to it. As my lights pass over it I see a guy sitting in the passenger seat, lean back, head laid back and mouth open, and then I see what looks like a human head bobbing up and down in front of him. I've seen this before. I'm thinking someone is having a good time. Nope. Turns out it's a guy from out of state who has a kid who goes to my college who was set to graduate the next day. The head is one of the balloons he bought for here at a nearby truck stop. He was asleep and left the air on and it got caught in an air current in front of him, thus the bobbing up and down. I woke him to check on him and eventually told him what it initially looked like. His only reply was, "Yay, I wish." My husband told me a story of one time when he was patrolling around and he spotted a guy who was in a straitjacket come round the corner of town that he was patrolling. Instantly suspicious. He ran over and grabbed him and asked him what he was doing. He said he was just messing around with it with a friend, but he lost his friend and can't get out. So my husband asked to call his friend just in case, and lo and behold he wasn't even lying. Poor bastard. This is how a real good friend acts though. At around 2 AM on a weeknight, I see a guy bolt from a house in a quiet residential burglary hotspot. His face is covered. He's wearing sunglasses or something similar and the kind of dark clothing you catch burglars in. As I follow him and start to shout up on the radio, the car's parked between us clear to reveal he is running on a lead behind the tiniest dog I've ever seen. A clearly uncontrollable pooch that is having the time of its life. I just kept going. Tiniest dog. That's the dog I'd use if I wanted to avoid suspicion, rob stuff, and then run off with the dog in my pocket. I'm the person that was doing something suspicious for a totally legit reason. Back in college, my female roommate and one of her female friends got in a rough patch and things boiled over at the local dive bar. They went outside to hash things out and I saw she left her purse behind. I paid both our tabs with my own money and brought her purse outside to give it to her. Well, I guess they made up and their way of celebrating was running through the street yelling at the top of their lungs. So I tried to catch up to them, without thinking how it looked. Two drunk girls running and screaming down the street while a drunk 6 feet 1 inches, 200 pounds bearded man, is chasing after them with a purse in hand. I got pulled up on while smashing a car with a sledgehammer and a crowbar. My car had been absolutely totaled by a drunk driver. It was sitting in my driveway and I decided I wanted to get all my stuff out of the trunk before I sold it for scrap, but the trunk was so smashed in I couldn't just pop it open normally. I misinterpreted your story and thought you saw the drunk driver smashing in your car with a sledgehammer crowbar and then you were like, oh crap, and just hauling stuff out of the car while he was going to town on it. My girlfriend worked at a haunted house. She was taking some co-workers home. Cop pulls them over, rolls down the window and sees bloodied zombies everywhere. Cop freaks, calls for backup, and they're yelling, "We work at Horror Hill, IT's alright." He finally got the message. They said he had to catch his breath. He told them he was about to freak out really hard. Went down amiably, however, and everyone had a laugh. Sounds like something I'd do if I were a cop, and one of the reasons why I am not and could not be a police officer. You have been visited by the ingenious Joe. Comment brain so you always see the glass half full. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.